Eleanor Hayes stood at the edge of the rain-slicked pier in Seattle's Elliott Bay, the kind of place where the Pacific Northwest's endless gray skies met the churning water in a symphony of muted despair. It was early autumn, the air thick with the scent of salt water and distant pine, carried on a wind that whispered through the skeletal masts of moored sailboats like ghosts regretting their choices. The ferry horns blared in the distance, low and mournful, slicing through the fog that clung to the sound like a lover unwilling to let go. At 55, Eleanor felt as weathered as the wooden planks beneath her feet, splintered by years of unspoken grief. Her coat, a faded wool thing she'd bought decades ago in a thrift shop on Capitol Hill, hung heavy with drizzle, its collar turned up against the chill that seeped into her bones. Not just from the weather, but from the hollow ache that had become her constant companion. She watched the waves lap against the pilings, their rhythmic slap echoing the pulse of her memories. The city skyline loomed behind her, a jagged silhouette of steel and glass pierced by the Space Needle's optimistic spike, but it felt worlds away from the quiet torment inside her. Seattle had always been her home, a place of perpetual renewal through rain, yet for Eleanor it was a canvas of loss, painted in shades of overcast skies and empty streets. She came here often, to this pier, when the weight of solitude pressed too hard, hoping the vastness of the water might dilute her pain. Today the fog rolled in thicker, blurring the horizon until sea and sky merged into one indistinguishable void, much like the days that blurred in her life since that fateful night 10 years ago. Flashback. The headlights cut through the downpour like knives, the wipers on her old Subaru slashing futilely against the torrent. Her daughter, Lily, 19 and radiant with the fire of youth, laughed from the passenger seat, her voice a melody over the radio's static hum of some indie folk song. "Mom, you're driving like a grandma," Lily teased, her eyes sparkling under the dashboard glow. Eleanor smiled, gripping the wheel tighter, the road from Tacoma slick with oil and rain. They were heading home after a college visit, dreams of art school and independence filling the car like warm steam on the windows. Then the screech, tires on wet asphalt, a truck swerving from the opposite lane, its horn a banshee wail. The impact was a thunderclap, metal twisting, glass shattering like Eleanor's world. She woke in the hospital, bandages wrapping her shattered arm, but the real wound was the doctor's words. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hayes. Your daughter didn't make it." Her husband, Tom, stood by her bed, his face a mask of grief that would soon crack into blame. "You were driving," he whispered later, the accusation hanging like smoke. Within months, he was gone, packed bags and a note on the kitchen table. "I can't look at you without seeing her." Back on the pier, Eleanor shivered, pulling her coat closer. The memory lingered like the salt on her lips, bitter and inescapable. She had rebuilt her life in fragments: a small apartment in Ballard, a job as a librarian at the local branch, surrounded by books that offered escape but no solace. Her days were a ritual of isolation, mornings with black coffee staring out at the locks, afternoons shelving stories of other people's lives, evenings with a glass of cheap Merlot and the hum of the television masking the silence. Loneliness wasn't just an absence, it was a presence, a shadow that followed her through the bustling markets of Pike Place, where the fishmonger's calls and the aroma of fresh flowers mocked her emptiness. It was on such an evening, as the sun dipped low, casting the bay in bruised purples and golds, that she first noticed him, Marcus, a retired fisherman in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair tousled by the wind and eyes the color of storm-tossed waves. He leaned against the railing a few feet away, sketching the horizon in a worn notebook, his pencil moving with deliberate strokes. Eleanor didn't speak to strangers, hadn't in years, but something in his quiet focus drew her gaze. The fog lifted slightly, revealing the distant outline of Bainbridge Island, and for a moment the world felt less oppressive. Weeks passed in that slow, deliberate rhythm of autumn turning to winter. The rains intensified, turning Seattle's streets into glistening rivers, the leaves on the maples along her walk to work matting into a sodden carpet that smelled of earth and decay. Eleanor's apartment, a second-floor walk-up with creaking floors and windows that rattled in the wind, became her fortress and her prison. She would stand at the sink, washing a single plate, the steam rising like forgotten dreams, and think of Lily's laugh, Tom's departure, the way loss had carved her into a hollow vessel. Flashback. The funeral. Rain pounding the cemetery tent like accusatory fingers. Friends murmured condolences, their faces blurred by tears, but Tom stood apart, his shoulders hunched. Later, alone in their bed, Eleanor reached for him, but he pulled away. "How do we go on?" she whispered. "We don't," he replied, his voice cracking like ice. The divorce papers came 6 months later, served at the library where she had retreated into the stacks, hiding among biographies of resilient women she envied. One rainy afternoon at the library, as the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and the scent of old paper mingled with the damp wool of patrons' coats, Eleanor met Clara. A spry woman in her 60s, with silver hair pinned in a loose bun and a laugh that cut through the quiet like sunlight through clouds, Clara was a volunteer who organized the book club. "You look like you could use a good story," Clara said, sliding a novel across the counter. A tale of redemption in a coastal town. Its cover faded like Eleanor's hopes. Eleanor hesitated, her fingers tracing the embossed title. "I live in stories," she murmured, "but they don't live in me anymore." Clara's eyes softened, crinkling at the corners. "Then let's change that. Join us Thursday. No pressure, just words and warmth." The book club became Eleanor's tentative bridge to the world. In a cozy corner of the library, surrounded by mismatched chairs and the aroma of herbal tea steaming from mugs, she sat among strangers who became confidants. Clara, with her tales of a life spent teaching art and public schools, her own losses, a son to addiction, a marriage to time, mirrored Eleanor's pain without judgment. "Grief is like the Puget Sound," Clara said one evening, as rain pattered against the windows like impatient fingers. "Deep, unpredictable, but navigable if you learn the currents." Their dialogues unfolded slowly, emotional layers peeling back like the pages of the books they discussed. "I blame myself," Eleanor confessed over tea after a session on a novel about maternal guilt. "If I hadn't insisted on driving that night—" Clara reached across the table, her hand warm on Eleanor's cold one. "Blame is a thief, dear. It steals the life you're meant to live." Marcus reappeared in her life like a recurring motif in a film score. She saw him again at the pier, then at the Ballard Locks, where salmon leapt at stream in defiant silver arcs, their struggle a metaphor for her own halting progress. He was feeding breadcrumbs to seagulls, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. This time, she spoke. "What do you draw?" she asked, her voice carried away by the wind. He turned, his smile crinkling his weathered face. "Moments," he replied, "the way light dances on water, the fog's embrace. And you? What brings you here?" Eleanor paused, the truth bubbling up like the loch's rising water. "Escape," she said softly, "from myself." Their conversations began as whispers against the roar of the loch's gates, evolving into walks along the canal where the scent of wet earth and blooming hydrangeas filled the air. Marcus shared his past, a wife lost to cancer, years at sea grappling with solitude. "The ocean teaches you to bend, not break," he said, his voice gravelly like pebbles underfoot. Eleanor opened up in fragments. Lily's vibrancy, the accident's shatter, Tom's abandonment. "I feel like a ghost in my own life," she admitted one dusk, as the sun set in a blaze of orange, painting the water in fiery hues. The middle of her story unfolded in slow, aching turns, the drama building like storm clouds gathering over the Cascades. Winter descended, blanketing Seattle in a hush of snow rare for the city, the streets transforming into muted wonderlands where holiday lights twinkled like distant stars through frosted windows. But for Eleanor, the season amplified her isolation. Flashback. Christmas is past. Lily's excitement unwrapping gifts under the tree, Tom carving the turkey with a grin. Now her apartment echoed with silence. The single strand of light she hung, a feeble attempt at cheer. One night, alone with a bottle of wine, the pain crusted, a breaking point. She clutched Lily's old scarf, inhaling the faint lavender scent that lingered like a phantom, and sobbed until her chest ached, the walls closing in like judgmental eyes. Clara noticed the shadows under Eleanor's eyes at the next book club. "She comes stay with me," she insisted, her home a cozy bungalow in Fremont, filled with art supplies and the aroma of baking bread. There, over shared meals of hearty stew simmering on the stove, steam curling like secrets revealed, they delved deeper. "You've carried this alone too long," Clara said, her voice a gentle anchor. "Let me help you navigate." Emotional dialogues flowed. "Why did he leave?" Eleanor wept. "Because I reminded him of what we lost." Clara hugged her. "Or because he couldn't face his own grief. That's on him, not you." Marcus became the third pillar, his presence a slow-burning flame. They met at coffee shops where the espresso's bitter tang mirrored her lingering sorrow, or wandered Pike Place, the vendors' calls and fishy brine a sensory symphony. One evening, as snowflakes danced under street lamps like hesitant lovers, he took her hand. "You're not broken, Eleanor. You're healing, like the tide reshaping the shore." Their first kiss was tentative, under the gum wall's quirky chaos, a moment of vulnerability amid the city's whimsy. Turning points accumulated. A therapy session Clara urged her to attend, where Eleanor confronted her guilt in a room smelling of chamomile tea and quiet empathy. "I survived," she whispered to the therapist, a breakthrough like sunlight-piercing fog. Another, visiting Lily's grave, snow blanketing the headstone, Marcus by her side. "She'd want you to live," he said, his arm around her shoulders. Eleanor placed flowers, petals soft as memories, and felt a crack in her armor widen into release. The climax built cinematically, a storm both literal and metaphorical. A fierce nor'easter battered Seattle, winds howling like Eleanor's suppressed rage, power lines snapping like frayed nerves. Alone in her apartment as lights flickered, a call came. "Tom, after years of silence. I saw a photo of Lily online," he said, voice slurred with regret and whiskey. "I miss her, miss us." The line crackled with static, mirroring her turmoil. Flashbacks assaulted her, arguments post-accident, his packed suitcases, the doors slamming like finality. "You left me to drown," she cried, the phone trembling in her hand. "Why now?" His confession poured out. Remarried, divorced again, haunted by ghosts. "I was wrong. Can we try?" The storm peaked outside, rain lashing windows like tears unshed. Eleanor paced, the room illuminated by lightning flashes, her shadow dancing wildly. "No," she said finally, voice steady as the eye of the storm. "I've learned to swim alone." Hanging up, she collapsed, sobs racking her like waves. But in the release came catharsis, a powerful emotional peak, the pain cresting and receding. Dawn broke clear, the city washed clean, puddles reflecting a tentative blue sky. Eleanor emerged changed, the air crisp with pine and promise. With Clara and Marcus, she found redemption. Volunteering at an art therapy center for grieving parents, her hands shaping clay into symbols of hope, the scent of wet earth grounding her. Dialogues deepened. "You've given me light," Marcus said on a spring walk, cherry blossoms drifting like pink snow. "And you've shown me the shore," she replied, their embrace warm against the chill. Eleanor, at now 56, stood on the pier again, but not alone. Clara laughed beside her, Marcus sketched their silhouettes against the sunset. The bay sparkled, fairies gliding like promises fulfilled. Sensory details enveloped her, the salt breeze, the distant seal's barks, the warmth of hands entwined. She had grown from broken to whole, her past a scar that strengthened rather than defined. In this cinematic close, hope bloomed like the city's rhododendrons, resilient and beautiful, a testament to healing's slow, poetic grace.
If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories.